I want to be clear, I'm not saying that this was justified or deserved, but I think this is a very good example for why it's important to always mind your business. The short video that you guys just watched shows a man standing on top of a table. His partner is on the ground pleading for him not to look over the wall. He doesn't listen to her and he looks over anyways, and the video cuts off here, but shortly after this, he ends up getting a firearm injury right through his head. You guys catch my drift. This tragic footage was recorded back in 2024 in Brazil, and the unfortunate man that was looking over this wall was a 33-year-old by the name of Bruno. Bruno and his partner were hosting a party at their residence when Bruno thought what he heard were gunshots coming from his neighbor's property, so he decided to hop on this table and look over while his girlfriend pleaded for him to get cover. Upon looking over the barrier, his 41-year-old neighbor, Agnaldo, was on the other side, and he is the one that pulled the trigger, ultimately ending Bruno's life, causing him to fall backwards, lifeless, in front of his horrified partner. The neighbor, Agnaldo, claimed that he thought Bruno was a home intruder trying to scale the wall to get into his residence, but to me that doesn't really track, especially considering Bruno thought he already heard gunshots, so why were gunshots going off earlier in the first place? In any event, I am neither the judge or the jury here, and
very poorly wrapped pallet by a bunch of lazy asses, and because of this, a brick flew off, hit the woman, and then 2 hours later, she passed away. Now, people are saying that this happened on June 20th. I say this all the time. This could happen to anybody. This could happen to you. This could happen to me. Dog, you got a bigger likelihood of walking outside and getting striked in the fucking balls with lightning. It's not happening to like anybody. This is a 1 in like a 4 chance. This is like, again, when that guy...
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'm going to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Merkakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the elect, feeding the sheep of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the Heavenly Father, which the world ignorantly calls God. Bahashem means in the name of, and Yahushai is the true name of the Son, which the world ignorantly calls JC. His true name is Yahushai in the ancient Paleo Hebrew. And Lord willing, this be an edifying lesson. I'm going to be speaking about how it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God, right? It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, right? Hebrews 10:31. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. And basically that video, the first video I played was a clip. And actually before I mentioned that and go into the details, I was going to say, the probability is the Lord's probability. When these people use these things, like, oh, the chances of this thing happening is 1 in a trillion, 1 in a million. Right, you're going off of what Esau statistics, or you're going off, the way Esau looks at things, saying this could only happen in 1 in 7 billion times. No, this could happen if the Lord ordains it to happen. Because there's something called predestination. So when a vending machine falls on top of somebody, or a shark goes and kills somebody. Even these people say, that has an X, Y, and Z probability of happening. No, this is actually the Lord who's determining that. These people act like they know the exact number, right? And the guy in the video, the second video I played, he's an Israelite. But besides the point, right? I was mentioning how he was mentioning, you have like a 1 in a million chance of getting struck by lightning, or a 1 in a zillion chance, but no, you have, the Lord can make those odds, just for you. You know what I'm saying? The Lord doesn't go off of probability. The Lord's ways are different from the way our ways of thinking, right? Men looks at statistics and probability and measurements and values. Right, the Lord, he looks at things differently, right? Isaiah 55:8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. right? So what we're able to think about the Lord is far beyond, the thing, our understanding, you know. So saying things like, you have less chance of X, Y, and Z happening to you, or whatever. Well, no, if the Lord ordains it, that will happen to you, and that's it. If you're predestined for something to happen to you, right, it's gonna happen to you. That's just how it works, right? And so I'm gonna go into the details of the video, right? Mainly the first video. The first video is this dude. He's peeking over a wall, and then basically, you know how these people are. It looked like he was trying to almost like impress his girlfriend or something. Anyway, there was a dude shooting outside the wall. He basically, keeps peeking over, and people around him are telling like to get off the wall, and ultimately this dude ends up getting shot in the head. Just bam, and that's and first of all, these people were out partying, right? And that's an example, right? That first of all, not to be in the house of mirth, right? And second of all, that's being a fool. We're supposed to be wise, right? You're over here peeking over a wall. People are telling you, oh, don't look over the wall. But what does this dude do? He tries to put on some sort of like, persona or whatever, or ultimately that ends up being, to his leading to his death, and that's judgment, right? These are all judgments from the Lord. The Lord puts a certain person at exact place and exact time, right? Ultimately, that was predestined. Right? Dude didn't want to listen, whatever. That was his judgment. The second video is basically a brick flying out of a car, and then I didn't play the video, but basically the guy goes into details. Basically, the brick flies in the car, flings out of the pallet of another truck across the road, and flings into somebody else's car window, cracks a person. Basically they end up dying 2 hours later. And this guy basically was saying that you have a less probability of getting hit by lightning or whatever. But no, the thing is, all these things were ordained by the Lord. And a lot of people say, oh, this could have been avoided, or why do these things happen to people? Well, the scriptures say what? Evil men understand it not judgment, right? So, the Lord is the one who causes, death and life, right? When a certain person gets taken out, or in one of these gruesome ways, or however, right? The Lord, that was ultimately the Lord, right? He basically, orchestrated that, right? And for whatever reason, they could have been wicked in their past life, whatever the case might be, right? They could have been wicked in their current life. That's judgment. And this is Book of Proverbs, chapter 28, verse 5. It says, "Evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things," right? And basically, when these people die, right? People, they start crashing out, whatever, right? Why did the Lord have to take? Why did this guy? Well, why did he have to die? Why did Daquan have to die? Why did Uncle Billy had to die? Why did little Johnny have to die? Why did a tree fall on top of little Johnny, who was only 8 months old? That's because little Johnny was out here, a murderer in his past life, and he was out here, committing adultery in his past life, right? Daquan was committing adultery in his current life. You know what I'm saying? This is just examples, man. These are basically these are judgments from the Lord. And so when you see these things like a brick falling from a truck, hitting a dude in the head, or a bullet, neighbor shoots somebody in the head with a bullet, or an elevator falls on top of a dude, or a tree falls on somebody. Right? These are judgments from the Lord, man. Okay, you have to understand that's the Lord behind these things. 1 Samuel 2:6. The Lord killeth and maketh alive. He bringeth down to the grave and bringeth up. The Lord maketh poor and maketh rich. He bringeth low and lifteth up. He raiseth up the poor out of the dust, and lifted up the beggar from the dunghill, to set them among princes, and make them inherit the throne of glory. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and he hath set up the world upon them. Right? So the Lord orchestrates all these things, man. You know, whether you have money, whether, you know, what you're in X or Y or Z position, where you're walking across the park, right? Where you're in prison, where you're walking across the park and the tree fucking falls on top of your head, or you park your car and then what, you move your car a little bit up, and then a fucking, you know, a semi truck comes in and fucking, you know, falls right on top of you, or a tree falls on top of your car. You know, all these things, they're orchestrated by the Lord, man. You know, the Lord putting the Spirit on certain people to be at an X, Y, Z place at the right time. You know, it's not a matter of probability. You know what I'm saying? Probability, oh, there's a 1 in a trillion chance. No, man. You know, you can't be looking at things in that way. You know, that's the Lord. The Lord he's the one who actually orchestrates these things. You know, if the Lord wants it to happen, make it happen a million times, you know, he's going to make it happen a million times. You know, that's just how the Lord works, man. Right? But yeah, you know, these are just examples of judgment, right? You know, when you see people dying, right? You know, these are not. It's not a matter of a probability, right? It's the Lord's timing, right? Same with that that doomsday clock, right? That they have. You know, ultimately, you know, it's good that we're supposed to measure the time diligently, right? But you know, we're not going off these people's timing. We're going off the Lord's time, right? You know, Esau wanted to say, you know, we have 85 seconds in this clock. Well, the Lord can. What about the Lord, man? We have to look at the prophecies, man. You know, we want these things to speed up faster. You know what I'm saying? We want these things to speed up faster. You know, the Lord knows the day or the hour, right? Not, you know, we're not going off by what these people say, right? But I just wanted to make this quick lesson. You know, Lord willing, this is an edifying lesson, right? And yeah, I want to give all glory and honor to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors to the apostles and the elders at Great Millstone, and peace and salutations to the elect, feeding the sheep of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, with sincerity, truth, and with charity, and shalom.